I hope you can hear me. My lapel microphone is working. It's a pleasure to be here, not least to hear a Game of Thrones reference, which isn't to do with Boris Johnson and Michael Gove from last week. What an extraordinary time in politics. So much is happening across the political spectrum. So much is happening regarding Britain's place in the world following the referendum, and whatever side of the debate, the referendum debate, you may have been on. I don't think anyone can deny that the result is a very significant one indeed, and that it creates a space in which we can now discuss where Britain's future in the world is going to go and the sort of country in which we are going to live. At this time, therefore, there is perhaps no better place to be than at the centre of the economic debate that has been growing in Westminster politics for some time now. That about the north of England, the northern powerhouse, the opportunities that exist, and the opportunities that have been missed so often in the past. It is a fact, ladies and gentlemen, that if we can grow the economies of the north of England at the average rate of the UK economy is predicted to grow between now and 2030, we can add £40 billion to our economy. Just the average rate that the UK as a whole is predicted to grow. Regardless of anyone's individual politics, that is too big an opportunity to miss. That is too big a target to ignore. And that is one of the most exciting opportunities for real debate about how we can drive economic policy and start to address some of the long-running challenges that have led to the inequalities that we all know exist in the economies in different parts of our great nation. Fundamentally, that is what the Northern Powerhouse is about. It's about shifting the political agenda so that we focus on that potential, we find solutions for how to unlock and deliver on that potential, on how to make our country richer and greater and stronger, and how to improve the lives of those who live in not just the economies of the north of England, but in the UK as a whole. Over the last year and a few months since I was appointed as the Minister for the Northern Powerhouse, we've started to put in place many of the foundations for the work that needs to be done to deliver on that agenda. You will have heard, no doubt, in much of the media discussion, the focus on transport, which is often, and indeed when we first started, was the dominant issue in terms of the Northern Powerhouse discussion about what needed to be done. There are the obvious needs for investment. Often quoted are the figures that might be spent in central London and drawn in relatively shallow, indeed, comparisons with what has been spent in the north, but not put in the full context of the history that has led to some of those inequalities. Crossrail is cited more often than I care to remember, but we do not too often, or indeed often enough, hear the truth that London lobbied for over 2 decades to secure the Crossrail investment that it's now going to benefit from. What we have lacked in the north of England has been an equivalent, focused, unified voice. It's been a consistent message built on strong and logical and tested economic foundations to argue for what we need to see and what we need to do to drive our economy into the future. So there are things that are happening, that are exciting announcements, like the new Northern Rail franchise, which is going to replace all of the Pacer trains, those terrible buses on tracks, which have blighted our international transport network for longer certainly than I care to remember. Well, they will, by 2020, all be gone, replaced by new or as new trains with Wi-Fi, with a 33% increase in capacity. And for context, ladies and gentlemen, Crossrail will be an 11% increase in capacity for London. We're going to be delivering a 33% increase in capacity for the north. But there is still a great deal which needs to be done. We've established Transport for the North, that statutory body, which brings together representatives from many of the different areas, economies, the city regions, the different areas that are part of that great northern economy, to take a strategic view and inform the debate about where future transport priorities should go, to give that voice and that direction so that the north can punch above its weight in the way that London has in the past and lobby governments of whatever colour for the solutions that it wants to see, with the prospect of delivering real change and long-term economic growth. But we've also set about not just focusing on those individual projects, but freeing the north of England to think about for itself what it wants for its future. And I think one of the fundamental shifts that we've seen through the Northern Powerhouse as a project is tied to the devolution agenda. Manchester is a good place to talk about it, because Greater Manchester got the first devolution deal. But other areas are catching up quick. There are more devolution deals across the north of England than there are anywhere else. Tees Valley, the northeast, Greater Manchester, Liverpool City region, Sheffield City region. These are all areas that are going to receive significant transfers of power from central government to start the process of controlling their own economic destiny. These powers will come with that directly elected individual, the Metro Mayor, who will have the mandate to drive forward an agenda, who will have the powers to do what that local economy needs, and our door in government is open for further discussion and further rounds of transfers of powers where they identify that they would be of benefit, and who will fundamentally, and this is very important, be accountable to the people for whom they are meant to deliver. They will also be well placed to do that joint working, the sort of work that Respublica has identified in its report when talking about a council for the North. And I'm not making a government commitment to it, but I will recognise the fundamental truth that underpins it, which is that the North needs to speak with one united voice to end parochial infighting. Whilst rivalry and competition is welcome and can be positive, too often it has meant a siloed approach to making the case for our broader economic needs. It's an opportunity to start to bring that to an end and to focus on the big things that we need to drive our economy into the future, and to make the case for those to government, whoever it might be, and to take increasingly, as the devolution agenda progresses, the powers that we need closer to us to make those decisions for ourselves from government, as we build up the ability to deliver on those projects and demonstrate that we can think in that way, to take that from central government to be frank, take some of those powers away from ministers like me and faceless civil servants in Whitehall, who even I at times cannot name, and to give those powers instead to people who actually understand the economies that make up the diverse area that is the North of England, and most importantly, the opportunities that are represented by those economies. I recognise absolutely that what Greater Manchester needs to do for its future skills base, to meet the needs of its future economy, will be different to what the Tees Valley, where I'm a Member of Parliament, what the Tees Valley needs for its future skills base. But both have very significant needs. Both need to increase productivity. Both need to increase the skills base. Both need to retain more of the skilled young people that are born and raised in those communities to work in those economies to drive them forward into the future. But instead of central government, in a centralising way, applying a uniform approach to areas of policy, for the first time, there is now a real space in which local actors who understand those economies best can shape those agendas. And that, for me, is fundamentally what devolution is about, and it's why it's so important for the Northern Powerhouse as a project, and it's why it's so important that we have conferences and discussions and debates such as that which you have attended today. Because it is not politicians who've got all of those answers. It's business people, it's the academics, it's the senior leaders in our public sector, it's the people who actually day in, day out live and work in those communities and understand what their needs are and what their potential is looking to the future. There are lots of other pieces that we must bring together to make this project work. I touched on transport, I touched on devolution. This morning I was in York to sign a memorandum of understanding on a new enterprise zone, government support and backing the official government stamp of approval for a project they want to deliver in the City of York, which will create more than 8,000 new jobs, increase the size of the city economy by 20%, and deliver more than £1 billion to their GVA over the coming years. Exciting project that I didn't think up sat in an office in Westminster, but which they came together, multiple different agencies, to make the case for to government, and which we have been convinced of and are now supporting. So enterprise zones are important. The Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund, over £400 million to help small and medium-sized enterprises, crucially important to help those businesses which too often feel detached from the support that is available for the economy and enterprise and industry. There are the work that is being done by UKTI, and in the autumn statement the Chancellor announced around £20 million to refocus some of UKTI's work on the Northern Powerhouse and the Northern economy. Because for too long, investing in the UK has meant investing in London and the South, and now that is changing. And this is an exciting opportunity, not just because we know the potential that exists in the North, but because the global market for attracting investment has been stagnant for too long. And for the first time that many people can remember, we've brought something new to it. And I look back at the visit to Manchester by President Xi of China, a 4-day visit to the UK, 1 day of which he came to the north of England and visited Manchester, the impact of which is almost immeasurably significant. Not just for the Chinese market and the investment that China can bring, but for every other country around the world who saw this happen and ask the question, why has he gone there? What's there for us? Can we be part of what this is? And I think back to the steady stream of economic advisors from embassies from across the world that came to see me in the weeks following that to find out what it is they were missing out on and how they could be part of it, the big opportunity that represents. We brought something new to market. We've given new controls and are giving further control to people who know what to do with it in those local economies. We're investing in transport and giving control to those areas to think strategically and in the broader sense about what should be done in the future to deliver on transport priorities. And, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a referendum in which this country has decided, whether you agree with it or not, that we're going to leave the European Union. Why do I mention that? Because not to do so would be to ignore the elephant in the room. I absolutely recognise the concern that exists around the decision that's been taken, just as I recognise the excitement from those who wanted to see it delivered, the mixed feelings that are represented by what is an extraordinarily significant decision taken by the British people, and one which now will not, in my opinion as a political observer, indeed as a political actor, will not be reversed. That means, though, that it is now incumbent on all of us, and those of us who care about the North and the economies of the North perhaps more than many, to shape what that future agenda is going to look like. We can look down at our shoes, we can look down and complain and grumble, we can argue about the result on one side or the other of the debate that was had, or we can proactively and positively shape the future agenda that will now emanate from it. There are good arguments on both sides of the debate. There are good arguments to stay and good arguments to leave. But what is fundamentally true is that the rest of the world is a very big place, and it is growing faster than the European Union has been now for decades. We in the North, I think, must seize this opportunity and see it as an opportunity, not to ignore, undoubtedly, the challenges that are represented by what will now happen, but to focus on the positive and what it can mean for us and for the economies of the North of England. Europe and the countries that make up the European Union since 1980 has halved in terms of its share of world GDP. Over the last decade, the only continent other than Europe that hasn't shown economic growth is Antarctica. The truth is, and it is fundamentally true, that the rest of the world is growing faster, is more dynamic, and doesn't face some of the big challenges that are coming down the track for the European Union. You may believe that we were best placed as part of that union to face those challenges with them. But given the decision that's now been taken, the opportunity that is presented to us is to truly take the North global, is to take the Northern Powerhouse to the next stage of looking at what it can offer to the world and what the world can do for us. And we can only do that if we are positive and optimistic and dynamic and flexible and engaged. And I have no doubt, when I look across this changing landscape of political and economic debate, that the North of England is better placed than it has ever been to do those things and be that place. It is extraordinary that Res Publica is launching Res Publica North. It is extraordinary that only 2 weeks ago I spoke at an organisation called Policy North, another think tank which has been launched to engage with what's happening in the economies of the North of England. It is extraordinary that in May next year we're going to elect Metro mayors who will speak not for structures built on historic political boundaries, but for sensible economic areas, often uniting communities that have had historic rivalries for years, indeed for generations, but who will focus then on what needs to be done to drive forward those economies, and will work together across those areas to drive forward what needs to be done for the North of England as a whole. This is an incredibly exciting time. Over the last year and a few months, we have laid the foundations for the Northern Powerhouse in devolution, in transport, in the structures that can deliver it, in the work and strategic thinking that's gone into UKTI. And at the right time, almost unbelievably and unpredictably, the turmoil in all national politics of all different colours now presents an opportunity for us to seize the agenda and drive it in the interests of the economy of the North of England in a way that I do not think has ever been done before. The foundations are there. There is an awful lot of work that now needs to be done. We cannot turn around a multi-generational inequality in the shape of our economy in the UK overnight, but the chance is better than it perhaps has ever been to put in place what needs to be done to do that work for the future generations that will follow us. I think this is an incredibly exciting time. I think the excitement of it is demonstrated not least by the fact that we're having this conference here now, by the fact that a myriad of organisations are engaging in this debate, by the fact that for more than a year, with our Westminster and London-centric media, the Northern Powerhouse and what it means for the Northern economy, whether the coverage has been positive or negative, and there has been mixed coverage from the media, as you would expect, has been front and centre in much of our national political debate. It is now incumbent on all those of us who care about the North of England, the economy of the North of England, and the future prospects of the economies that make up the Northern Powerhouse, to positively engage and shape this agenda going forward, because there has never been a better time to do it, and there is never likely to be a better chance again in the future. It is now that we will set the course for the economy of the North of England for a generation to come. It is now that the attention is focused on us. It is now that the changes in our place in the world and the understanding of what the UK is going to be present us with the greatest opportunity that we are ever likely to see. Whether you welcome that that is the landscape in which we operate or not, it is undeniably true that it is the case that dramatic change presents dramatic opportunity for those who choose to seize it. I want us to be those who choose to seize it. I can't do that as a politician, not only as an individual, but also because my sphere of experience and understanding, by the very nature of the work that I do, is limited in some respects. I want the best people in manufacturing to tell us what we need to do to drive manufacturing in the North. I want the best people in our public services to tell us what they can do and what we need to do to facilitate them. I want local enterprise partnerships, local authority leaders, local business leaders to come together and identify the opportunities and to lobby us, those of us in government, about what needs to be done. And I want them to lobby us alongside their new devolved authorities about what powers they should be given, so that it's no longer people like me in Westminster making the decisions, but it's people much closer to those communities and economies that can drive them forward in future. I talked about the enterprise zone in York that I was visiting this morning, signing that memorandum of understanding. That came about because they identified the opportunity that is now driving it. They made the case, and they made it successfully to government. There are countless isolated individual examples of this sort of work happening up and down our country and right across the north of England. We need now to thread these together into a compelling narrative that will drive our economy forward, not just in those isolated areas, but for the benefit of us all. There has never been a more exciting time to be involved in this debate. There has never been a more important time to draw on the breadth of experience that we all bring to that debate to inform it and shape it going forward. There has never been a more significant time in living memory to define where our country is going to be in the world in 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years. This is it now. And I welcome very much the contribution that you all make in the discussions that you have had and the work that you do, that Respublica is making in informing that debate. And I hope that together this is something we can shape positively for the future of our economy and deliver on for our economy and future generations going forward, because that will not just be good for the Northern Powerhouse or for the North of England or for places like Stockton, which I represent. That is something which is not only good, but is imperative for the UK as a whole. So thank you for inviting me to speak. Thank you for the work that you're already all doing, and I look forward very much to working with you all and Respublica going forward to shape what is one of the most important and exciting agendas that I can remember in my time in politics.
Well, I think that was one of the most impressive speeches without notes I've seen in some time. So you know, if the Northern Powerhouse can operate at that level as well, the future is indeed bright. So what I'd like to do is turn to the audience and ask some questions. So just as you prepare them in your mind, James, I was very struck by your point post-Brexit, that now the North has to turn to the world in order to change its fate. And also this morning I quoted from the OECD and they said only areas that are engaged in international trade have any hope in changing that fate, which essentially supports what you described. And you talked about UKTI. What do you think else is needed to actually help the North essentially become a trading entity that can truly succeed and therefore tackle all these issues of inequality and disadvantage?
I think it's a great question. I don't have the magic bullet answer to this, but let me make a few observations. One, what is happening in UKTI is a very significant shift. They're actually doing the strategic work now to look at what the priorities for the North should be. And that's going to mean taking some tough decisions. So, for example, not every city, region, or other economic area across the North and powerhouse across the North of England can be a specialist area in every different area of economic activity. We are going to have to take some choices. And we're going to have to say, you know what, if it's going to be biosciences that we're brilliant in there, that's going to be the hub for that, the centre for that, where we sell for that. Not everyone's going to be happy when these choices are taken about every individual decision. And that takes me to what I think is the next step of what needs to happen. And it's starting to happen already with things like transport to the North. For too long, and this is often driven by politicians, politicians think in artificial boundaries. So I'm an MP. I think in constituency boundaries. You might not believe this, but it's true. When I think of a map of the country, I can see all the individual constituencies in my mind. Because in the world in which I live and work, all of my colleagues around me represent different chunks, those constituencies, on those boundaries. And when I visit one, I have to tell whoever's constituency it is that I'm going there, and I think in that way. Councillors think in local authority boundaries and ward boundaries within them. Businesses don't. Businesses think, where do I get my workforce from? Where do I sell my products to? What are the transport links like? If I'm going to export, how do I get it out in order to do that? We've got to break down some of those political boundaries and start thinking strategically about the northern economy as a whole. If we can do that, then we will be much better placed to identify the opportunities and therefore to make our pitch to the world about why they should invest here. It's not about a little bit for you, a little bit for me, a little bit for him or her over there. It's about what is best overall to deliver for the broader economy and to make this work. So I think that is very important. Final observation that I would make in this field is that we have to some extent, address the tone of our economic debate. We live in a modern, internet-driven era. When somebody in Japan or India or China or South America thinks about building something or investing in a part of the UK, one of the first things they will now do is go on Google and type in the name of where they're thinking of going and read what it says. Too much of our news about the North focuses relentlessly on the negative and ignores much of the positive. You wouldn't think that there were many more jobs across the North of England than there were 5 years ago through the media coverage, which elevates any bit of bad news to front page headline and relegates any bit of good news to the back pages if you're very lucky. We need to change the tone and explain to the world that this is not just a great place because of its potential, but it's a great specialist place because of what it already does, what we collectively already contribute. And I would like to see our politicians, but also our media, yes, absolutely be critical and where it is appropriate, challenging where it is needed, but to also temper that by being positive and optimistic about our future. Too many of our politicians seem to be reluctant to learn that lesson. Too much of our media enjoys bad news because it sells papers, rather than thinking more broadly about what is needed to sell our regions to the world. If we can start to shift that debate a bit, I think we'll have quite a significant impact.
Thank you very much indeed. So, over to you. I'd like to take questions in a batch, if you will. So, do we have Mike? So, Hakeem, first of all. Looks like we don't have a mic, so...
Hakeem Yemi, from the Northern Health Science Alliance. Last week, I thought UKTI in the US and San Diego, San Francisco and Boston promoted the Northern Powerhouse and life sciences. And we met with 35 biotech and pharmaceutical companies in that 5 days. The companies we spoke with noticed the fact that they've historically invested in the Southeast, in the Golden Triangle, and they had a certain comfort of what they could expect in the Southeast.
And it felt like we needed to give actually more. We had to go beyond what they might expect from the South East. What can we do, whether it's through fiscal incentives or otherwise, to give those companies the confidence to step outside of the Golden Triangle?
Okay, well, perhaps so. First, I think it's challenging some of the outdated and inaccurate perceptions about the North of England, and I've already talked about some of my views on that. Secondly, I think devolution has a role to play with this. I think it is actually quite compelling to be able to say that certain control of some of the things that will affect your business will be local to you and will be chosen by your employees, not somebody away in London who you've never met, who will change as governments change, or indeed as prime ministers change, topic at the moment, or for whatever other reason, some faceless bureaucrat or anonymous minister that has no connection to your part of the world, but somebody who actually comes from and cares about the local economy will make some of the decisions that affect you. I think we also need to demonstrate where appropriate, and this is a UK-wide government requirement, the government support and encouragement of sort of investment about which you talk. That's why I think enterprise zones are very important. Enterprise zones provide a number of advantages, reduction of business rates, accelerated planning, better access to broadband connectivity, all these sort of things. But actually what they also do is make a statement from central government that this is an area we have identified that has great potential for growth and we want to support. And often we undervalue in this country how that sort of type of political support is weighted and rated abroad. I think we need to do more of that, be cleverer about it. And one of the examples where David Cameron, I think, was very clever, but I'd like to see whoever is the next Prime Minister to go further, is the appointment of Prime Minister's trade envoys. So David Cameron started the process of appointing individual MPs and peers on a cross-party basis to actually link with the country and to be the UK's trade representative in that country. So you had a politician who was making the case for investment. What I find absolutely staggering is how rarely businesses that want to invest, or people who want to attract investment, engage their local MP. Now I know not all local MPs are quite suited to being wheeled out in front of intelligent business people, but some are. And it would be no bad thing to start to use that asset, all these underutilised politicians sat around kicking their heels and claiming expenses. Let's put them to work and get them engaging where if a company wants to come invest in their constituency, they should be meeting them. To be frank, they should be taking them for tea and coffee in the Houses of Parliament, showing them this wonderful grand old building and saying how important it is that their investment comes to whatever constituency it might be. And we can talk about that, but we need individual businesses to engage and also, flip side, individual politicians to want to be part of that process. And if we can bring all of those sorts of things together, it's a multifaceted answer rather than a simple solution to a very real challenge. But I think those are the sort of things I would like to see. Small, sensible, deliverable steps that actually change the tone and give confidence to those that, as you say, might want to invest for all good reasons, other than the fact that it might just be a little bit outside of their comfort zone and not something they've done before in the past.
Thank you very much. How exciting. So we've got two questions here, side by side, and then I'll come to the others. Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, James Cooper from the Woodland Trust. In terms of things that could move forward the kind of enhancement of the Northern Powerhouse and the missing pieces of the jigsaw, as you referred to, it's first of all what the environmental strand is missing. And there might be an opportunity to do something a bit more visionary around both enhancing what's great about the existing natural environments and improving access to green spaces close to where people live to improve public health across the north. What about something quite visionary like a new national forest in the north, which some people might be aware, the National Forest in the East Midlands isn't wall-to-wall trees, but green spaces close to communities, enhancing existing industry woods, etc. Something like that could be done across the north and might unite environmental projects.
I will take it in blocks because there are quite a few. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. Jeff Green from Wirral Borough Council. The strand that's run through today is a great opportunity, but also the future of the Northern Powerhouse. So, at a time of real change, new leader, new Prime Minister, potential movements, James, clearly you're going to be promoted with the talent you've displayed today. So, as ministers and personalities move on, what's the future of the Northern Powerhouse? And will it continue to grow and thrive?
Thanks, Jeff. And we've got one more question in the front. So can you grab the mic, please, Will? So just the gentleman in the pink shirt.
Thank you, Kevin Beattie, Industry Council in Cumbria. So I'll answer that first question. Brexit is a big thing for Cumbria because, and the Northwest, agri-food is huge in the Northwest. It's a big employer and it's a big exporter as well now. And all environmental and agricultural and countryside policy seem to come from Europe, as did a lot of the funding. I just wanted to find out how we can connect with that funding now it's back as a national debt.
Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, three broad and I think very pertinent questions. James, declaring your interest in the Woodland Trust, wanting a new national forest. Actually, you're absolutely right. But this is a very good example, I think, of why devolution and local leadership is important. Because the best of the world, that isn't something that would necessarily have occurred to me when I first set out to be appointed, was first appointed as Northern Powers Minister. But actually, the more I've seen, the more that our tourism depends on our countryside and rural environment, the more the quality of life is important in retaining skilled people for our industries and economy, and the more that is actually dependent. It's more obvious as you go through looking at these things that much of that is dependent on the quality of our rural environment. When I took the Cities and Local Government Devolution Bill through Parliament in the last session, the National Parks came to see it to ask for an amendment, but no one had been willing to give it before. And it was a bit of a chance in their arguments. It wasn't really anything to do with my bill, but they wanted a specific power of competence for national parks. And for various reasons, no one had been able to deliver this. And they came and gave a presentation to me. They managed to get to me through a county councillor that I know in North Yorkshire who got me on Facebook and persuaded me that I should meet them. I was at a moment of weakness and found myself out front and assembled a great good of the National Parks movement. But actually we amended the bill. We changed it and we gave them it. They've been asking for it for I don't know how long, and it's significant, really significant to them what they want to do. I suppose the reason I give that example is I don't pretend to have a monopoly on wisdom and what should be done. Actually, my very message is, please, everybody here, if you've got an idea, push it, drive it, talk to Philip about it, talk to the other organisations that are engaged in thinking in this area and make the case for it. It won't happen overnight. It's a good idea. At one point, somebody will catch me on Facebook, or somebody else, whoever it may be, and they'll go, you know what, actually yes, we should do that. And I am absolutely convinced of the value and importance of our natural environment in terms of the offer that we have in the north of England. So with me, you are pushing an open door. But that does not mean I'm in a position to deliver on whatever idea you put forward. It does mean that there is a big space in this debate in which you can make it, and I would encourage you to do so. Jeff, in the future of the Northern Powerhouse, I think it's more important than ever for the reasons that I've set out. But I don't just think it's more important than ever. I think it's been presented with, by circumstance and fate, a bigger opportunity than when I was appointed just over a year ago I ever envisaged it might have. I don't know about anyone else. I didn't predict the result of the referendum. And I certainly have watched with concern some of the naysayers and the doom and gloom videos, putting out their concerns in a way that is actually a risk of talking us into economic difficulty and challenge. And so I am now determined, regardless of what we think about how we got here, to make the very best of it, and to seize the opportunity for the North of England in particular. That ties into a reality that an observation I made in my life in politics so far that I will share with you. I was first elected in 2010 to a seat that had previously been represented by an MP of a different party. Well, I was for 3 years before that a parliamentary candidate. There is no lonelier a task than being a parliamentary candidate, because nobody wants to talk to you because you're not the MP. And I remember distinctly those who did talk to me then. When I wanted to get elected, what I wanted was to hear what the issues were, to engage with the people who were making decisions, to understand how to change the shape of the things that I wanted to change. So to get any audience and platform was an important thing. The day I got elected, I discovered I had friends I'd never known I had. Lots of them, queues of people wanted to come and see me. I never forgot the ones who spoke to me before I did. We are about to embark upon at least one very significant leadership election for one of our major political parties, the Conservative Party, who will choose the next Prime Minister. It's quite possible we will, at some point in the near future, embark on a leadership election to choose a new leader of the opposition, or indeed to reinstate the existing one, whatever it might be, as we go forward. There are few better opportunities to engage with somebody who's going to be the Prime Minister than when they are wanting your support to get there. And so we should be taking, they will come to every region. There will be hustings for Conservative Party members in this context, right across the country. And I'm sure the Labour Party will have an equivalent process if and when their leadership election takes place. We, in terms of those of us with an interest in this agenda, need to be there promoting it. There is nothing wrong at all with a big and loud challenge to, whenever they come to this region, to both Andrea and Teresa in the Conservative Party, and whoever it might be in the Labour Party, or whatever that might be, to say, are you committed to this project, and what will you do for it? Put it on the front page of the local paper. Put it to them in the hustings and meetings if you are able to attend, and get them to make those commitments and hear that message now, because there is no better time to make that case. That said, I think that message has been heard already, and indeed I've been to see both Theresa May and Andrea Leadsom in the last week to get specific reassurances on some of the projects that I have a particular focus on in the north of England and with the Northern Powers as a project, and I have been reassured by the private assurances they have given me. And Kevin, agri-food policy and subsidy. Let me make a prediction. This is not a commitment from me as a minister, this is a prediction from me as somebody who acts in the political space. If I was negotiating our exit from the European Union, one of the easiest ways to deal with the incredible complexity of it, and part of that complexity is because much of our regulation and law is now not in our laws and regulations, it comes directly from Europe. So if we leave, how do we apply that? One of the things that I would look to do is to transpose much of that straight into UK law. And the reason I do that is because we've got lots of big complex things we need to do. There are lots of things I would like to change about European regulations, but rather than trying to reintroduce them from scratch and change them, the easiest thing to do would be to transpose them more or less as they are, and then amend them once we've brought them home, and once you can have a proper thought-through debate about doing that in the right way in which to do that. That may not be the approach the government takes, that may not be the best approach, it's just the one that occurs to me as I sit here. However, my expectation would be that there will not be significant and dramatic change in this near term, or indeed even necessarily in the medium term, as we go through what's an incredibly complex process. There are too many big questions on the table already, without politicians creating unnecessary new ones by trying to rewrite the entire structure of the way that we regulate some of these very heavily regulated industries and areas of economic activity. When it comes to subsidy, I get asked this question a lot at the moment. I'm also the Minister for the European Regional Development Funds for my sins. We're not going to leave for at least 2 years, so nothing's going to change in the short to medium term. I think I'm as confident as I can be that much of the support that exists today will exist not just tomorrow, but at the end of that process. We are a significant net contributor to the European Union. So whatever our exit looks like, it is going to very likely be the case we have at least as much money to spend on support for regional economies and sectors of our economy as we receive back from Europe at the moment. And indeed, I think there is the opportunity to spend and target that money much better, and places like the north of England to make the case for additional spending. That mystical figure of 350 billion may have been a little bit exaggerated by some of the campaigners, but there is nonetheless a surplus of funds to be returned, and we should be making our pitch for how it should be spent to grow our economies across the world.
Thank you very much, James. I realise there were other questions, but we're already close to 10 minutes past time, and I think we should end it there. So apologies to people I know have questions, but I think it's best to draw a line and allow us all to go home. Sorry?
17:20 is at the end of the session.
17:20. Well, it's really down to the sense of aesthetic judgment of the mentor, but due to your very astute reading of time and its relativity, I shall see. Are you open to taking a few more questions?
Let's do one more quick round of questions.
Okay, then. That's very, very good of you. So, sir, well done. You've pressed your case, as the Minister argued. So I'll take one last round of questions. So
we can make it quick. We get really dirty looks from the civil servants.
Yeah, well, I picked up on that. I didn't want to indicate.
Go on, let's
I was reading that as well.
Fire through.
Thank you. I'm Mark. I'm a Chief Officer of the Voluntary Community Group over in Trafford across the water here. My question is you mentioned difficult decisions about centres of excellence, and you're going to upset a lot of people, or some people, in regards to how you make them decisions. My question is, what in your mind makes it acceptable that yourself and civil servants in London are making them decisions on our behalf, when all of your direction today and in previously in the last year has been we should be making them decisions where we want them centres of excellence?
Excellent question.
Good question.
So there's a question there, very quickly.
Thank you. My name's Graham White. I work for an organisation called the University Alliance. We know that since you're a minister in this government, you believe very strongly in deficit reduction and debt reduction. But one of the happier immediate economic consequences of the Brexit vote has been that there's been a huge sudden reduction in the cost of UK government borrowing. Should we at least consider the possibility of borrowing a very large endowment for the North?
I'm glad we had this question.
And thereby use the credibility of the British state to support investment in
Very good. The question here at the front. Tom, just there. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Rob Mukherjee, head of Vodafone North West Regional Business. My question is, if you had one ask of the UK's biggest corporates, let's say the FTSE 50 for argument's sake, to advance the Northern Powerhouse, what would that ask be?
Brilliant question, Rob. And very last question. Just quickly, I know, sorry, but just you've gone down very well, James.
The question's not always assigned, but
It's very similar. So thank you to you both for very powerful and compelling summaries. I think we all recognise a huge opportunity in front of us. It's very similar, actually. The way London has been very successful has been having a very strong private sector lobby behind it. And so I think what we need to do within the North, as well as it being seen as a sort of transport lobby for big investment and various other things, we need a very strong private sector lobby in order to be able to do this. And I also fear slightly that in order to justify the really big investments that are needed to transform the north of England, it has to be a combined effort across all sectors to be able to justify that level of investment. Otherwise, the compelling economic case will not be there.
I just have to draw a line there. I do apologise. James.
Gosh, Centres for Excellence, I won't decide where they are. UKTI is doing that work now in conjunction with the local enterprise partnerships that already exist. There are 13 across the Northern Powerhouse as an area. I was talking about specifically in terms of inward investment and attracting and selling. And so that work will be done by the organisations that represent business across the north of England already, in engagement with things like Chamber of Commerce, TVI, IOD and so on. It won't be a decision for me at a desk somewhere on Wharton, I can assure you. Borrowing endowments, should we borrow a big endowment, spend it on the north of England? No, I think we need to reduce the deficit, and indeed I think if you start borrowing large amounts of money on credit worthiness will be subject to challenge and question. This may, though, be a live debate, and I may give a completely different answer depending on what the new Prime Minister tells me the policy is. One ask of big corporates tying into the very, I think, appropriate statement that you made, sir, as well. Well, so my ask of big corporates would be to get involved in this debate. But there are lots of things, I know that's a bit of a politician's cop-out, because I could sit there and give each different corporate a different answer if I knew your company in the way that you do. But I'd like Vodafone to get some of its most high-skilled, high-level operations that aren't currently based in North England to relocate them here. But I'm not going to say that's something I want every big company to do, because I don't know your business as well as you do. What I want is for you to be part of this debate, this discussion. That it is already happening. Business North, for example, already exists and is starting to engage in this. Another example of an organisation that has come into being in the last year because of this agenda, which was
mentioned the partnership.
Indeed, an opportunity. That's a very good point. I was told to mention this earlier, so please talk here. This is what happens when you don't speak with notes. One of the other things that we're doing, and we launched it only a few weeks ago, getting a big thumbs up now from some of the back, is your business can, and your organisation can be a Northern Powerhouse partner, which will lead to more direct engagement in terms of the policy making we're doing. There is then a badge that you can use that shows your engagement with it. We ask partners when they sign up and are approved, and I'm afraid I do that in London. I go through the list and pick people I like, pick people I don't like, and take them off the list. I haven't done that yet. We ask them to announce something, or at least something, but hopefully a lot more than just one thing, that they are going to do to help promote the economy of the North that they were not otherwise going to do until they've signed up to be a partner in the Northern Powerhouse as a project. But that opportunity is there. We will give details to Philip about how you can apply. But we'll make sure that anybody who wants to apply goes through the vetting process as quickly as possible, because we're keen to see the positive things that you will announce that you're going to do, not for us, but for the economy of the North, which we'll all benefit from in due course.
Right, I'm going to call it there. Can I just say and thank James for what's been really a bravura performance. I think it's been superb, and really, really grateful to you. At the end of the day, you've enthused people who, quite frankly, are exhausted now at the North, and you've reached us, and we're enormously grateful. I think another round of applause.